March 1907. Of 82 professional rikishi active in Japan, only one had ever crossed the Pacific. The Yokozuna title was a license, not a written rank. The word kokugi, national sport, had not yet appeared in print about Ozumo. 6 months later, both would change. This is Hitachiyama Taniemon, photographed in 1905 in full ceremonial regalia. The 1905 ceremony is finally legible. March 1907. Tokyo. Hitachiyama, age 33, signed his name to the agreement. No reigning Yokozuna had ever crossed an ocean to represent Japan. The voyage would last 6 months and end inside the White House. Why was a wrestler trusted as a diplomat? 3 pieces that standard histories rarely connect: a rank not yet codified, a sport not yet called national, and an American president who wanted the meeting. By late 1906, the request was already traveling east. 4 large figures in a single frame, 2 in Western suits, 2 in traditional kimono. Hitachiyama and Umegatani stand at the center, attended by an entourage and watched by a public crowd. A century opens up in detail. Hitachiyama was 33 in 1907. He had received his Yokozuna license in 1903, alongside the second Umegatani, 2 names on a document certified by the Yoshida house in Kumamoto. That license was the highest honor a rikishi could hold. It was also, strictly speaking, not a rank above ozeki, the second highest rank in sumo. The Banzuke, the ranking sheet, said nothing yet about a top tier. 5 Dewanoumi wrestlers, photographed inside the stable in 1937. Stripped to the mawashi, posed together between training sessions, they form a family portrait of one of sumo's most enduring houses. The interior of a Tokyo Heiya, 3 decades on. Hitachiyama belonged to Dewanoumi Beya, the training stable where wrestlers live and train. By the end of 1906, his reputation in Japan was settled. He had performed shiko, the ritual leg stomping, at every major shrine festival in Tokyo. What he had not done was travel. A 1789 woodblock triptych captures the first Yokozuna promotion in sumo's recorded history. Tanikaze and Onogawa received their tsuna, the white rope worn by a Yokozuna, from officials in formal attire. The print was widely copied and widely sold. The request that reached Tokyo in early 1907 came through diplomatic channels. American officials wanted Japan to send a representative figure on a goodwill tour of the Pacific coast. The intended audience was the Japanese-American community, then under sharp pressure from school segregation orders in California. The Japanese government wanted a figure who read as neither merchant nor soldier. The reigning Yokozuna's name surfaced at the top of every list. By 1907, the title first granted to Tanikaze and Onogawa carried exactly the weight Tokyo needed. Hitachiyama and Umegatani lock into a crouching stance on an outdoor dohyo, the elevated clay ring. A referee stands between them in formal robes. An attendant kneels at the side. The match unfolds without a roof. What black and white had flattened becomes texture. In 1907, sumo's national standing was less fixed than later memory suggests. The Ryogoku Kokugikan, the permanent indoor hall, did not exist yet. There was no all-weather venue, no codified tier above ozeki, no printed phrase calling the sport Japan's national art. The Yokozuna was a license holder, ceremonially the most senior. On the Banzuke, though, he was listed as an ozeki. The rank below him had no written tier above it.
当時の番付に横綱の文字はなく、大関の上位に位置づけられた称号は書き記される制度をまだ持っていなかった。その土俵という空間そのものの構造をここで図に起こしてみる。
Set out as a diagram, the dohyo's full structure becomes clear. The straw bale boundary that marks the ring, the wooden platform that elevates it, and the two marks at the center where each bout begins.
The geometry stops being abstract.
Every element of the ring carries ceremonial meaning that predates the Meiji-era. In 1907, this structure existed only outdoors, at shrine festivals, at the Echo-In grounds in Tokyo, and on the touring circuits that crossed the provinces. The Kokugikan, the permanent indoor hall that would give Sumo a fixed address, was still 2 years away. Jinmaku Kyugoro, the 12th Yokozuna, stands in full ceremonial regalia on the dohyo. The Kesho-Mawashi, the embroidered ceremonial apron, falls heavy from his waist, the tassels weighted. His name floats in calligraphy at upper right.
The pigments of the original print step forward.
Woodblock prints had long treated the Yokozuna differently from other wrestlers. A grander stance, a fuller apron, a name placed higher on the page. By the Meiji-era, newspapers had inherited the same visual grammar. The shift in language was visible, the institutional change was not. That was the gap the voyage would step into. A second period print of a Yokozuna in full ceremonial regalia. The Kesho-Mawashi is rendered in heavier outline, the tassels emphasized, the figure framed by Japanese calligraphy. The visual codes of rank are already fixed in the woodblock. The word kokugi had Edo period roots, but in 1907 it had not yet been applied to professional Sumo, the way later generations would assume. Tokyo papers wrote about Sumo as spectacle, as old custom, as a Ryogoku attraction. The case that Sumo was something more solemn, something representative, needed an event to anchor it. No event of comparable scale had yet occurred on Japanese soil. Hitachiyama in full attire on a postcard portrait circa 1910. The apron carries a tiger motif. The decorative blue border frames him as a figure already destined for reproduction in print. The embroidery sharpens under the new light. The steamer left Yokohama in March 1907. Hitachiyama traveled with a small party of attendants and an interpreter. He brought a ceremonial apron, the one worn in dohyo-iri, the ring-entering ritual. He was warned, before he sailed, that the audiences ahead would not have seen Sumo in their lifetimes. The flag of the city and county of San Francisco, circa 1940. An eagle perched above a crown, a scroll bearing the city motto in Spanish, Oro en paz, fierro en guerra. Gold in peace, iron in war. The colors of a municipal emblem widen the geography. San Francisco, March 1907. The city was less than a year out of the earthquake that had leveled large parts of it. Hitachiyama walked into a country still rebuilding. The Japanese-American community that came to meet him had never seen a reigning Yokozuna in person. The motto on the city's flag described a city that was, in 1907, neither fully at peace nor fully rebuilt. Inside the Oxford College Auditorium, 1907. Rows of empty wooden chairs face a raised stage. Ornate columns rise to a coffered ceiling. The room is the kind that hosted 100 touring lectures that decade. The American interior steps into focus. From San Francisco, the party moved east. Los Angeles, Denver, Chicago. Performance halls, civic auditoriums, university gymnasiums. There was no dohyo to stand on. Hitachiyama demonstrated shiko on bare floors and explained kimarite, the winning technique, through an interpreter. Reporters described his bearing more than his throws. The conventional account treats the tour as goodwill. The diplomatic record reads more pointedly. In 1907, the Japanese government was managing growing anti-Japanese sentiment in California schools, and the steamer carrying Hitachiyama also carried a calculation about which face of Japan to put forward. Yokozuna Hitachiyama Taniemon, photographed in 1911, in full Kesho-Mawashi. The postcard text identifies him as the 19th in the line of the rank.
A century-old image steps closer. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, the sumo establishment watched. A Yokozuna abroad, without a tournament, without bouts, without a ring, was a category that had no precedent. The Yoshida house had certified Hitachiyama for ritual, not for representation. Whatever he did in America could not be undone. The same postcard portrait, in tighter crop, Hitachiyama in tiger-motif apron, ringed by a printed border that already treats him as a figure to be circulated. Detail emerges where the eye lingers. By summer, the party had reached the eastern seaboard. The White House visit had been arranged through the Japanese legation in Washington. Theodore Roosevelt, then in his second term, a known admirer of Japanese martial and physical culture, had requested the meeting himself. The man Roosevelt had asked to receive was the 19th Yokozuna, photographed here in the full regalia of his rank. Into the present, briefly. Inside this building, summer 1907, a Yokozuna was received as Japan's representative, both sides treating the meeting as a diplomatic audience. A young Hitachiyama in studio. Dark kimono, top knot, steady gaze into the lens. The face is composed. The rank has not yet arrived. The early portrait steps forward. On the day itself, Hitachiyama carried no sword and performed no ring entry. What he brought was the weight of a title that had no institutional definition and a room that was about to give it one. The familiar apparatus of sumo, the ring, the rope, the gunbai, was absent. Inside the White House, none of that apparatus was present. Four men of consequence, seated as peers. Nakayama Hakudo in kendo gear. Kinoshita Tomosaburo in a suit. Mifune Kyuzo in a judo gi. Futabayama in mawashi. A pre-war gathering rarely assembled in one frame. The colors of a rare gathering land at once. Everything heard so far is the public framing. The private record is sharper. Roosevelt did not want a performance. He wanted a meeting between equals. And he wanted the Tokyo papers to print that he had received the Yokozuna as one. The image of parody captured in photographs like this one was exactly what Roosevelt was constructing. Two men, one seated, one standing. The military officer is composed in his chair. The tall, lean figure beside him fills the frame. The height contrast is the photograph's subject. Scale, made literal. The reception itself was brief. The president shook Hitachiyama's hand and remarked on his build. They spoke through interpreters, a few sentences about Japanese physical discipline, a few about the next century. There were no toasts and no speeches. No confirmed photograph of the two men together has been located in any archive. What survives is the scale contrast that every written account mentions. The 19th Yokozuna in his official 1911 portrait. The apron falls heavy from his waist. The tassels catch the studio light. The composition is upright, ceremonial. This is the public figure, the man who stood for the rank. What the photograph cannot show is the choice he made inside an American reception room 4 years earlier. Not the ceremonial form, but the diplomatic one. The choice now reads as choice. Hitachiyama did not stamp shiko. He did not bow as a wrestler to a patron. He bowed as a representative to a head of state, a bow he had rehearsed with legation staff the evening before. The form was diplomatic, not ceremonial. The Tokyo papers would understand the difference instantly. San Francisco in 1866. The Ladies' Protection and Relief Society building stands alone on a Franklin Street hilltop, surrounded by undeveloped scrubland and a wooden fence. The city behind it is still mostly hills and timber. A frontier city 4 decades before it would receive a Yokozuna. Roosevelt spoke to reporters afterwards. The framing he chose, Hitachiyama as a representative figure rather than a sporting curiosity was deliberate. The Japanese legation made sure that framing reached Tokyo on the next cable. The city that had received him at the start of the voyage was still raw, still building its own identity, still deciding what it owed to the Pacific. A brush ink sketch of Maruyama Gontazaemon, one of Sumo's legendary Edo-era heavyweights. Wide stance, heavy build, a calligraphic inscription at upper right. The image was copied for generations. The ink darkens, the figure holds. The visual language of sumo was ancient. A large man, a wide stance, a name in calligraphy above him. Japanese audiences brought that grammar to Hitachiyama's image abroad. What was new in 1907 was the audience reading it. American newspapers had no template for a figure who was wrestler, dignitary, and national symbol at once. An aerial photograph taken over Tokyo after the firebombing of March 1945. Vast areas reduced to ash and rubble. Amid the destruction, the distinctive dome of the Kokugikan still stands near Ryogoku Station, a late-war survivor of an institution built in another century. In Japan, the immediate reaction to the voyage was swift. Newspapers ran the legation's account on the front page. Sumo, long described in the Meiji press as an Edo holdover or shrine entertainment, was suddenly framed as something that could stand for the country in a foreign capital. The word kokugi began to appear in editorial columns within weeks. The dome that would house it would survive even what came later. The White House grounds today, photographed from the same approach the legation would have used. The East Room itself, where the meeting took place, is preserved at the same scale and proportions it held in 1907. The surviving photograph of Hitachiyama and Roosevelt sits in Tokyo at the National Diet Library, not in the White House archive. Yokozuna Akanumi stands on a platform, raising a tournament trophy. Smiling attendants in formal dress surround him. The energy of a wrestler at the center of a national moment is captured mid-celebration. The cheer reaches the photograph. The return voyage took 6 weeks. Hitachiyama arrived back at Yokohama in September 1907. The reception there was unlike the one he had left in March. Officials, sumo elders, the press, the public. He was the same man on both piers. The space around him had changed. A commemorative postcard from 1909. The newly opened Kokugikan sits at the center, ringed by circular portrait medallions of the era's prominent wrestlers, each labeled in Japanese. The commemorative ink takes on its first color. 2 years after the voyage, the changes it had set in motion became formal. In February 1909, the Sumo Association codified Yokozuna for the first time as a rank above Ozeki. Not a license, a rank. The new Ryogoku Kokugikan opened 4 months later. Both reached the public as natural extensions of what the country had already accepted. A 1909 postcard of the Ryogoku Kokugikan. The dome rises above Tokyo's eastern districts, photographed in the year Sumo first acquired a permanent indoor home. The original printing surfaces. Every element of this institution descends from the decisions that followed Hitachiyama's return. The ceremony of the ring, the rope of the highest rank, the architecture of the venue itself. All of it traces back to the years immediately after 1907. The building is the argument made permanent. Kobayashi Kiyochika's 1881 woodblock print, Ryogoku, After the Fire. Charred tree stumps, a damaged brick building, gas lamps still glowing in the dusk. Silhouettes move through the wreckage. The old Sumo district has been stripped to its bones. In the same year as the Kokugikan opening, the word kokugi entered general use to describe sumo. The phrase had been argued over for decades. After 1907, it stopped being an argument.
The voyage had supplied the missing image, a Yokozuna received by a head of state, and a press caption in Tokyo calling sumo Japan's national sport. The terminology followed the picture. The district Kyochika, painted in ruins by 1909, had been rebuilt as the home of that terminology.
Yokozuna Futabayama performs the ring entering ceremony at the Kokugikan, 1941. The rope at his waist, the apron falling below, another wrestler seated quietly to the side. The ceremony has reached its fullest expression. The 1941 frame thickens. In 1914, Hitachiyama published an expanded edition of Sumo Taikan, his treatise on the sport. In it, he dismissed Akashi Shigenosuke as a true Yokozuna and traced the proper origin of the title to the Kansei-era pair Tanikaze and Onogawa. The history he wrote was the history of a rank, the rank he had helped codify. Yokozuna Hagoroyama performs the ring entry outdoors, 1941. Two attendant wrestlers flank him. Their aprons are layered in heavy embroidery. The garden behind them holds visible deer. The outdoor frame brightens. Hagoroyama was the 48th Yokozuna, 36 holders of the rank after Hitachiyama. The ceremony is identical: the rope, the attendants, the slow ritual of the ring entry. The form Hitachiyama had carried to Washington had become, by Hagoroyama's era, the most recognizable image of Japanese sport in the world. A 1942 photograph. Yokozuna Akinumi at the center of a ring entry ceremony. Two seated wrestlers flank him in ceremonial aprons. Two child attendants stand at the front in formal dress. The composition is by then a template, a pattern repeating in formal stillness. Every Yokozuna who traveled abroad in the half-century that followed traveled along the route Hitachiyama had drafted. The ceremonial apron for ceremony, Western dress for protocol, the bow for the head of state, the photograph for the Tokyo press. The template was fixed. Tomioka Hachimangu Shrine in Tokyo. A stone monument stands for the Dewanoumi School of Sumo, the lineage that produced Hitachiyama. Beside it, older steles carry the single word Yokozuna in carved kanji. The rank is remembered in stone. The voyage that codified it is not mentioned. Hitachiyama as a young man, in studio. The same top knot, the same composed gaze. Before the license, before the voyage, before the rank that did not yet exist. The first image. Closing the loop. The man who stepped off the steamer in March 1907 had been a license holder. The man who stepped back onto the pier in September was something else. Quietly, without speech, without a bout, he had shifted a category. The next Yokozuna sent abroad would inherit a shape he had not invented, but had finally given a use.